Garland and Calvin, and today we will be giving our movie review for the directorial debut of Regina King's movie. Well, it's not her movie, but the directorial debut for Regina King and the movie One Night in Miami.
It's
What's
her
going
movie.
on,
We can say it's her movie.
Garland? Okay, we say it's her movie. We'll do that. We'll say it's her movie. I'm looking at these. You gonna have to forgive me. I'm trying to get these feeds together to make sure that we in everything. So I see we on the Instagram feed. Let me check the Twitter feed here, make sure we on there. In the meantime, while I'm doing all that, what's going on, sir?
I'm good, Doc. Man, I can't complain. We in transition to a new president,
Yeah,
new
yeah.
administration. It's just a different vibe in the country. People are a little bit more relaxed. I watched one of those press conferences the other night, and it was like people were happy. They were like, "Thank you," and nobody was being disrespected. It was like a whole new energy. So yeah, man. We'll see what's going to happen in a couple of weeks with this impeachment trial coming up and stuff. And so we'll see what happens with Donald
Oh
Trump.
man. So we gonna have Mitch McConnell sitting there trying to make sure that we don't get any of this together, you know what I mean? So we'll
Right,
make sure we get it in for the people. Definitely need Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer to
right.
roll it through. I know it's Pelosi that's going to have to send. Well, they said they're going to send it Monday. So I know at that point it's in the hands of the Senate. So Schumer and the boys, they 50-50. They're going to have to, listen to the
And they
argument
might
and
want
see
to
if
hold
they.
it up because now you got this other thing with the Department of Justice and them trying to do a coup there. He was going to fire the acting chief of the Department of Justice. Yeah, the New York Times put out an article last night of how they were trying to pressure the acting chief to overturn the election results in Georgia. And
I
so
did not hear this one.
yeah, and so one of Trump's guys told him, "Well, we're gonna fire you, and I'm gonna replace you, and then I'll stop the electoral college vote." And so all of the
Wow.
attorneys within the division said, "If you fire him, we'll all quit." And so that made them stop and not fire him. And then maybe the next day you had the coup attempt down at the Capitol and all those things. So even all the way up to January 6th, he was still actively trying to overturn the election results.
Man, this man is just they messing up my birthday, man. Now January 6th, as hard as I tried to
Right, it's gonna go
get
down
the
in
folks.
infamy now.
Exactly. It's hard as I tried to get y'all to remember because of me. Now y'all gonna remember because of Trump. This
Trump.
what you did. I'm officially changing my birthday. I haven't figured out what day yet, but I'm gonna look for the least populated birthday date, and that's gonna be me. It could be. I know you're the fourth, so it
Yeah.
might be the fifth. It might be the seventh. I might even go full. What's the next sign? Aquarius. I might
You
even
might
go
go
full
quiet.
Aquarius and jump into February the 6th. You know what I mean? And my oldest daughter, she's in Aquarius, so she'll be like, "Nah, you
Okay.
you ain't coming here. You ain't coming
Right.
here with that." So
That's crazy. But yeah, man. So we thought 2020 was something, but 2021 it's kind of been like, hold my beer. I'm about to
yeah,
show you.
basically, basically.
Yeah, man. I watched One Night in Miami. It was a great movie. I'm ready to discuss, man. So you ready?
I'm ready to go, man. I'm going to tell you though. I know that we are all things black, but I thought One Night in Miami was all things whack.
Wow. I will admit there was points when it got kind of slow and I looked away. I mean, because everybody's been, oh my God, Regina King, she did her thing, she did her thing. And let's talk about it.
Okay.
Let's talk. And we're gonna put this out now to our three viewers on here.
We got four, man. It's just
Four.
we got four. Yeah, don't discount.
It's going to be a lot of spoiler alerts. So, if you haven't seen the movie yet, we're not going to give too much away, but there's going to be some spoilers in it. Okay. So, all right.
All
So,
right.
all right. One night in Miami, is a 2020 American drama film about a fictionalized meeting of Malcolm X, Cassius Clay / Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, and Sam Cooke. It's the first feature film directed by Regina King from a screenplay by Kemp Powers based on a stage play of the same name. It was his stage play. Now, it's February 25th, 1964, and Cassius Clay is set to fight Sonny Liston for the heavyweight title in Miami, Florida. And so Clay enters the fight as a 7-1 underdog to the 3-year reigning champion Liston, who was a feared puncher with knockout power in both hands. Now, Clay, he was a rare heavyweight with hand speed and the ability to duck punches, and he dominated Liston in this fight. Liston, he eventually retires in his corner due to allegedly an inflamed shoulder in the 7th round. And so this just sends shock throughout the boxing world because basically Ali was this big underdog, and Liston was the Mike Tyson of his day. If you remember when Mike Tyson was knocking people out with like 30 seconds in the first round, like you get the pay-per-view, your boy get the pay-per-view, you show up, and you finally get seated, and fight was over. That was
don't come late. Don't come late.
Don't come late. And so Sonny Liston was like that. And so after the fight, Cassius Clay, Malcolm X, Jim Brown, and Sam Cooke, they meet in the room at the Hampton House to celebrate Clay's surprise win. And so let me talk a little bit about the central characters, because I don't want to assume that everybody knows the backstory of these 4 persons. And so, of course, we know Muhammad Ali. His mama named him Cassius. I'm gonna call him Cassius. His mama named him Clay. I'm gonna call him Clay.
Who in this movie he was Cassius Clay. He was not Muhammad Ali in this movie. He was Cassius
not Muhammad Ali. And so at that point in his career, Cassius Clay, he was the former 1960 Olympic gold medalist in boxing. And he had ascended the heavyweight division to become the #1 contender for the title. Now, most critics viewed him as a clown that was more show than talent. You know, Ali, he was a big talker. They were used to the black athlete being quiet, not saying anything. And so Ali was a shock to, those sensibilities. Now, in the movie, he talked about it. He was inspired by the antics of the wrestler Gorgeous George. And so Clay, he takes on this flamboyant personality inside the ring. But outside of it, he's moving towards converting to a radical black religious organization at that time that was known as the Nation of Islam, which was led by Elijah Muhammad, who is viewed as kind of like a racist by mainstream society because they were preaching a doctrine that believed that white people were devils. And so in comes Malcolm X. Malcolm X, he was the national minister for the nation, and he was responsible for his growth in popularity in the late 50s and early 60s. But by 1964, things had begun to change for him. He was suspended indefinitely by Elijah Muhammad for his chickens coming home to roost comment following the assassination of President John Kennedy. If you remember this, and as a matter of fact, a lot of people were posting this the other day when we had the coup at Capitol and Trump losing, that it was the chickens coming home to roost. Well, this was something that Malcolm X said. He said, he never felt sad about chickens coming home to roost. In fact, he felt good, basically saying that you get what you put out. And so when he said this caused a national outroar, and Elijah Muhammad winded up suspending him, and he suspended him indefinitely. And so during that period of time, Malcolm, he decides that he's going to leave the nation due to these philosophical differences. It was not only just that he was sat down, and it was not only that he found out the information about Elijah Muhammad and the several children that he had out of wedlock. Of course, you can refer to Malcolm X, the movie, or you can refer to the autobiography of Malcolm X. But also, they just had philosophical differences. Malcolm was moving more towards taking an active stance in civil rights. And if you know anything about the Nation of Islam, they've always been a standoff organization. They've never been involved in the civil rights struggle. And so Malcolm, he's been serving as a spiritual mentor to Cassius Clay. and he's helping him with his transition into the nation. But he wants Clay to leave the nation and come with him as he starts this new organization. Then you have Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke, he's a singer and entertainer, and he's one of the first African American mainstream crossover artists. Cooke, who had his start in gospel music, not only makes the transition from gospel and R&B, but he's also a pioneer in that he controlled his own music, meaning that he owned his master recordings and his publishing. This was very rare for any, not only Black artists, but white artists. The music industry was controlled by certain forces, and one of the things that most artists did not have were their publishing rights and their master's rights. And so that's why a lot of times you would see Black artists make a song, it would be a hit on the R&B charts. Then a white artist would come and remake that same song and go to one on the pop charts. And a lot of times those Black artists did not get paid. People like Little Richard and others. And so he was rare in that he not only had his own record, Curtis Mayfield and the Womack brothers. He talks about Bobby Womack in one of the scenes. And so not only did he discover a lot of artists, he put these artists out and he put them on the game. He helped them get their own publishing, own their masters, in which they really controlled their own destiny in the music business. And then you have Jim Brown. Jim Brown was arguably the first superstar Black athlete, particularly in football. Now, unlike many of his peers, Brown was a vocal critic of racism, and he advocated for fair opportunities for African Americans. He was heavily invested in African American businesses, and he was really a leader when a lot of athletes were scared to speak out in terms of losing their careers. And so Jim Brown was always viewed as someone who was difficult, but he was a man that always spoke his mind. And so he had a lot of respect amongst his peers in the Black community for what he stood up for. And so that's just a little synopsis about, who these people were. So you have a background of why they were together. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the movie. And so we already kind of got a little feeling about how you felt about the movie. So Calvin, let's start with just a general overall rating of it. Did you think it was good? Did you think it was bad? What were your impressions?
Well, I've obviously seen worse. I didn't think it was horrible, but it's really difficult. And I think, and I don't know if it's just us, because our plays, us being Black people, our Black plays are so dramatic, and you're actually listening for the words, and in a lot of them, the singing. It's the content you're listening for. But when we watch movies, we're looking for a little more, and it's really difficult when they take plays and adapt them to movies. We talked about a little about that when we talked about Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Fences, it's a different feel to it. The issue, and I don't know if it's an issue, but the reason I didn't really like this is because where Fences and Ma Rainey's did kind of get a little more into the characters, this just seemed like they started with giving you a little background on the characters, but then it focused on what Malcolm wanted. It was all about what Malcolm wanted, and then it jumped from what Malcolm wanted to his conflict with Sam Cooke in there. And they were just all, and it was like Jim Brown and Muhammad Ali were just supporting actors sitting in the background.
Right.
And just for me, it just didn't. I don't know. I understood, and the content was good. But as far as it being a movie, it just seemed to drag in the middle so badly for me. Then towards the end, they started showing a little more of how they all moved on, which was a little better for me. Even with what seemed like the security guard for Malcolm X, even him, you would. I would have liked to seen a little more interaction with him, because just his little part, and even the other ones. I think the other guy's name was Jamal that was asking for the autograph. Even they
Right.
brought a little more life to it, but it just seemed to drag when they were in the hotel. And I know it was a play that was adapted to a movie, but bruh, if me, you, and two other dudes were hanging out after somebody made a great accomplishment, a promotion or something, in this case it was the championship belt, we're not just gonna be sitting in no rundown hotel room and then for excitement go up on the roof and have vanilla ice cream. Like, come on.
Well, Jim Brown said he wants some pussy.
He literally said that. He literally said that. And they made no moves to get any.
Right. Especially, come on, Jim Brown and Muhammad Ali in the same spot.
Come on. Come
Uh,
on. Come
come
on.
on, man.
Come on. Yeah, I enjoyed the content and the arguments and the conflict between Malcolm and Sam, but I really didn't care for the movie itself. Now, what I don't know, and I can always assume, but I don't know the role of director as the role of screenplay writer, because does Regina King have anything to do with the content, or is she just responsible for the delivery and how it's viewed? So I don't know who to blame. Like I don't want to
Sure,
blame
sure.
the writer, and Regina King had a lot to do with that also. So
It was kind of like after school special, like
yeah,
yeah.
I can.
It was short. I I wish it would have been maybe a little longer so they could have got into the meat or develop the characters and relationships. Like for instance, Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, and Sam Cooke were very close friends, and so as a
Oh
matter of
well,
fact,
I didn't see.
you
I
didn't know
didn't
that?
know that. So
Yeah,
in this movie, it seemed like Cassius and Malcolm were the best of friends, which everybody knew, and just like Jim and Sam are just kind of in the crew with
throw in.
him. Yeah, just yeah. I didn't know they were really good friends.
They were really good friends. As a matter of fact, the scene where he calls Sam Cooke up into the ring, that happened.
Right.
There's some clips
Okay.
where he actually calls Sam Cooke up into the ring, and they're talking as he's pointing to people in the audience and all those things that actually happened at that fight. And so, he did things with everything. And so, I was looking for a little more of the character development. I thought it was a good presentation. Now, I did believe in the actors. Their tone, the vocal tone. I mean, they really had it down. It was not, sometimes people come off when they're doing depictions of real life people, and sometimes they try to mimic the voices. It comes
Mm-hmm.
off something terrible. But I really, like, okay, these guys, they've actually put in their work. You can tell.
Mm-hmm.
Leslie Odom, a guy from Hamilton, he plays Sam Cooke.
Hamilton.
He's a singer. And so, it was not for a stretch for him. He sounded great. He really played that Sam Cooke role. I thought he was very good. I didn't necessarily believe in the actor that was playing Malcolm X. It was just
Really?
something about it that was kind of not as true as the other characters. I thought the young man that played Ali was very good as well.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I got out of it, and I wish they would have went into it more, was this dichotomy of political viewpoints. A lot of times, we think of race in terms of very myopically. We just think it's everybody who's black believes one thing. And what I saw in the movie, I guess as a positive, is we see this conversation of a dichotomy of a political viewpoint. You have Sam Cooke, who is representing kind of like a mainstream viewpoint of we have to get into the mainstream and control what's ours, and we can benefit from it, versus Malcolm X, who had the viewpoint of if you are open to the mainstream, then you're selling out. You know, it's kind of like that old thing when you were smart in elementary school and people told you were acting white.
Mhm.
You know, I felt that that was the he was trying to say to Sam Cooke. You out here singing on the records, you out here dancing and jigabooing, and Sam Cooke is like, I'm making money off of these people. I own my publishing, I own my masters, and he gave that example, but that was one of the things that I got out of it. And so let me ask you this, Calvin. You know, in that conversation, that play between Malcolm and Sam, you know, what do you think? You know, they were saying of what is best for the black community. What did you get out of that?
Well, I do want to say that they did a disservice to Malcolm X in that, only because for Sam Cooke to have to tell Malcolm X about masters, and that's where the money is made. So I'm making money off of them. They Malcolm X, all he did was study. I don't ever remember. Of course, I wasn't alive at the time, but I don't ever remember anything that I've read about him or seen about him where he's come out and said something that he hasn't been educated about before saying it.
Sure.
So that I think that was a disservice because I would assume that Malcolm X would know the money flow in the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
He would know that if Sam Cooke owns the masters, then he's not just selling out. He's actually sitting at the table with these people right now. And Malcolm X's approach would be, it's great that you're sitting at the table, but what I want you to do is bring other people to that table with you. That's the argument that I would see Malcolm having, and not the argument that you're out here singing for the white man and letting the white man do everything for you. But it was just kind of weird. Now, as far as the conversation and how I feel about it, it's just going to be like everybody would say. You kind of got to be in the middle of both arguments. You definitely want to be in a position where you are in charge of something and you are able to move at your own pace and making money from it, where you're not asking for someone to give you something. But you also want to be able to speak to the community and help others in the community and bring them along with you. Someone said that he wanted him to use his fame to help the movement, but you do want to be able to,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you do want to be able to help Black people. You definitely want to be able to help Black people, but you also want to be able to help your own family too. So you're kind of stuck in the middle when you're up in that area. And I think, and another thing, one of the things you mentioned was with Malcolm X, one of the reasons why he was leaving the nation is for philosophical differences. I think those philosophical differences was Elijah Muhammad having all these baby mamas out here and all these kids out here in these little rundown apartments that he was hiding from people. So I think
Sure.
those were his real differences.
You know, it's amazing. I read a book about Malcolm X. It was written by a historian. His name was Manning Marble. He passed several years ago, and his book is entitled Malcolm X: A Life of Reinvention. And this is the penultimate book about Malcolm X that deep dive into his past. It looks at, you know, his life all the way up to his death. A lot of good things. If you ever want to get, it was released probably 6 or 7 years ago. Outstanding book. And in the book, he does talk about, you know, the whole thing of Elijah Muhammad and, you know, having the children out of wedlock. But that definitely was something that shook Malcolm. But I think it was, you know, I'll also say it was a combination of you know, people are challenging him like, okay, you have all this lip from up in New York, but we're down in Selma, we're down in Montgomery, we're down in these towns actually putting our bodies on the line. And all you're doing is selling wolf tickets. You
Hmm.
need to do something. And him trying to push the nation towards being more active in the civil rights movement was something that, you know, Elijah Muhammad did not want to do. And so, yeah, that was definitely outside of, you know, Elijah Muhammad, you know, being an oho. Um, he definitely did not want to push the organization into becoming, and it's crazy because a lot of times we view the Nation of Islam as a civil rights organization, but when
We
we
do.
kind of lay out the okay, who did what, the NOI doesn't show up a lot of times. They're in the back talking about the white man, but when it comes to time to putting it on the line, it was Martin Luther King and others who were actually doing that work. Just to build on what you were saying, Calvin, about this dichotomy of the having mainstream or having economic empowerment versus also empowering the community. I agree with you. I think we can have both. And to me, that was something that was missing out of that argument of, okay, we could have both and make the community better. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Right.
And I think a lot of times in that argument, we want to sell out for one. Oh, we need to have businesses. Uh, we need to have capitalism. We need to have these things. And yes, we need money. We need money in the community. We need investment in the community. But also, we need people who are involved in the community, who are pushing the community to do other things. And so I think that, to me, that was the missing piece in the argument, that it doesn't have to be either or. It could be both. And I think, as a race of people, we still struggle with that, how to bring both into the equation. We can have social justice and economic empowerment as well.
And
Uh,
which in that movie, that was, if you know anything about Jim Brown, so in that argument, Jim Brown pretty much stayed quiet, but he was exactly that at that time, during that time in Jim Brown's life, he was an activist, but he was also making that money, and he had that empowerment, and he had a voice. They listened to Jim Brown. So again, I go back to the whole. I don't know if the movie was. I don't want to say not unrealistic, but it missed on a couple areas that it could have jumped on. Maybe it would have made it longer. Maybe it just didn't fit in what the storyline was. But Jim Brown could have jumped in the middle of that and been the shining example of that. Even Cassius Clay for some could have been the shining example of that, because the one thing he never did was shied away from black people, and he constantly talked about it. He sold the wolf tickets as entertainment, but he could talk about code switching and getting that money from them and being who they want you to be, but still being true to yourself. He did a lot as Cassius Clay, and then even more as Muhammad Ali. He stood for a lot. So.
Yeah. Also, you raised a good point and about Malcolm X, that how they portrayed him. I thought it was very thin. I agree with you that this was a guy who was very well prepared. This was a man who was
Exactly.
well read, who was a scholar in every sense of the word. And so I'm sure he knew how the recording industry worked. Also, I
Exactly.
thought it was a little thin in that I think he was a person, from what I've read, was a person who tried to reach everyone, especially after leaving the nation. He realized that I need to build a broad coalition. It's interesting when he was talking to Sam Cooke, and Sam Cooke said, okay, Malcolm had started off the sentence, well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad tells us, XYZ. And he was saying, well, I don't want to hear what Elijah Muhammad has to say. I want to hear what you have to say.
Right.
And I think, after this, of course, we see Malcolm's growth and, from the Nation of Islam viewpoint to a broader Muslim viewpoint. But I think, his portrayal in this was just, he really gave no mercy. It was all like, either you're all on my side or you're not on my side. And so that tension between those two characters, to me, was kind of like, yeah, I was looking for Jim Brown, because Jim Brown, like you said, this is a man who's very active in economic empowerment when he was playing
Yes.
in Cleveland and all of these things. And so for him to kind of, have this, he's just basically like, when they
Exactly.
got a little, Jim was say, hey, let's get it together. Like, okay, like this is Jim Brown. You don't have a little bit more dialogue for Jim Brown, especially the impact that Jim Brown has had on community.
And you're exactly right with them with Malcolm being a thin character because he was at this point in his life with this movie. They Malcolm was leaving the Nation of Islam. We know that when Malcolm was leaving the Nation of Islam, he realized that, and I guess he hadn't gone to Mecca then, but he talked about being in Mecca and seeing people of all colors and all hues. And so for Malcolm to be ready to leave the nation and still be on this, it's one way or another, I think may have been portrayed a little inaccurately. And it was another point that I didn't really like about Malcolm. He didn't seem like a coward, but he kept looking over his shoulder. Malcolm was well aware of what could happen to him.
Right.
They always show that picture of him holding the gun, which we know isn't a real picture, but they
Right.
always portray that image. But they portray that image because we know that Malcolm X was not one that was scared of conflict and standing up. Now, granted, if you know that something could happen to you, you're going to have a little fear and a little worry. But they made him seem like he's worried every second of the day that something's going to happen to him. He's constantly looking over his shoulder. And maybe that's true, but from what I gathered, I
Mm-hmm.
never got that sense that he was that worried about what could happen to him. I think he knew that something may happen to him, but not that he was welcoming it, but it wasn't going to stop him from delivering whatever message he needs to deliver and taking whatever actions he needs to take in his life.
Yeah, I think, one of the things, and I guess from a historical standpoint of, since like you said, he was on his way out of the nation, I know that he had a lot of conflict within the nation on his way out because he wanted to take people with him.
Right.
And so I think it was this internal fear as well as, these people who I trained and who I brought in. As a matter of fact, it was interesting. Early in the movie, he's talking about Lewis X. Lewis X is Louis Farrakhan.
Hmm.
And so he's talking about, how I trained Lewis X and I brought him in Boston and everything and set him there. And, how these people who he was viewing as really, I guess, in a lot of sense, his children, because he basically brought them in the nation and raised them, that they now have sided with Elijah Muhammad in many aspects. Maybe that was a fear point for him that, I'm going to have to do this alone. I'm going to have to make this change, but I got to make this change by myself. I think that's why, one of the things, and I read this was in the Man in Marble book. It didn't come out in the movie, and I'm guessing the play as well. The reason why Malcolm X was so close to Cassius Clay, he figured that if I can convert him and bring him into the nation, then Elijah Muhammad will lift my suspension and
Okay.
allow me to come back into the nation and serve in the nation. And so the record shows that after, because they did not believe that Ali would win, just like other people that just thought Ali was all lip. He was just this crazy guy talking on TV and all these things. And so when he actually won and they saw the potential of, okay, maybe we don't need Malcolm because this guy can be our next ambassador, really, they basically said, no, we're not going to release you to come back to be the national minister. And, that also kind of helped him really move forward out of the door. What's some other things, man, that you kind of caught for yourself within the movie?
So this one particular instance, and has to do with Jim Brown. Of course, at the beginning when he was sitting on the porch with with the white guy, and
Oh
you
yeah.
know, he said our families have taken care of each other. Jim Brown had that look like, you mean my family was serving your family or working for your family? That's the feeling I got from that. And then when he tried to help him out, he called him a nigger. He was like, you know, we don't allow niggas in the house, and
In, in the
just
house.
casually. And the reason I bring that up, because it really didn't seem to have any more impact in the movie at all, which again I thought was a missed opportunity. But the reason I bring that up is because within the past couple years, we have all been really, really shocked at the change that Jim Brown has made. Um, you know,
Right.
Jim Brown is, or I don't know what he is now, but was a Trump supporter, and I think we were all just a little befuddled. Now, with that being said, one of the things that Jim Brown has said in the past is that he's always had white people that have helped him out, which he has. You know, Jim Brown came from not just football, but he was a record-breaking lacrosse player, and Jim Brown has always had to have doors open for him from
Right.
white people to get to where he is. So I understand him not hating white people.
Mm-hmm.
But what I don't understand is he was part of that movement back then to get all the black athletes to fight for civil rights. And now you're supporting Donald Trump, which is, you know, so that movie and Jim Brown now is such a contrast. And
Right.
I remember when he said that to him, you know, we don't allow niggas in the house. I'm thinking to myself, is that a shot at the real Jim Brown? Like, bruh, you know we don't allow niggas in the house.
Right.
You
Right.
try, but you know we don't allow niggas in the house.
You know, no nigga coming up in here. You know, I do understand he was born and raised in South Carolina, and his mother moved to New York, Long Island, to work for a white family, and left him there to be raised by his grandparents. And so that backstory of the grandparents working for a white family, that does have some substance to it. And you know, he did have a benefactor when he was in Long Island that kind of helped him through high school, and that's how he got to Syracuse. And so, yeah, you know, I think for me, and I don't always. It's funny. I think back to Lovecraft Country when we were talking about the first episode, Sundown Towns, and we said that race was the major character in that episode. I
Yes.
definitely think race is also a major character in this movie, and you know, I think a lot of times we underplay it because we live in a society. It's like hip hop. You know, today's generation, they hear rap on the radio all the time. But for your generation, Calvin, we only used to hear rap on maybe on a Friday night, maybe on a Saturday. But you didn't hear it on the radio all the time. There was not a section in the store. You know, you might have heard it when you went to Rollskate, but it was not something that was in the mainstream every day. And so I think because race, even though, you know, we're seeing it more and more in the news, I think the impact on race, excuse me, on those people kind of, you know, shaped who they were. And especially we saw this at the end of the movie, as well as, you know, they're going into their separate lives. Particularly with Jim Brown, you know, his race experiences, and, you know, Sam Cooke, you know, one of the rumors about his death was because he owned his publishing and he owned his masters and he would not sell them to white corporations. They set him up to be killed. Now, if you've seen the Sam Cooke documentary on Netflix, you can reference that. There's some weight to that. And so, you know, this impact of race. And of course, with Ali, we saw it with um, denying of going into draft and going into the Vietnam War, and how that basically stopped his career for about 5 years. And you know, Jim Brown, uh, in a sense, being blackballed. You know, he left football early. You know, control calling his own shots, but it wasn't like he was getting every movie role and all these
Right.
particular things. And so, I don't think we can overstate enough, that impact of, the racial piece. And it's funny how Jim Brown was bringing up the thing of radical light skinned people. And he's talking about how, he said it always seems like the light skinned brothers are always the most radical, burn the house down type of brothers. He talked about W.E.B. Du Bois and others. And, it's a little credence to that, because when I was in college, it seemed like the most radical brothers were the real more light skinned than me was the light skinned bros. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's color consciousness or whatever. But that was an interesting thing to me. Do you think light skinned guys are more radical than dark skinned guys?
Listen, I don't want to slander light skinned people because I know some radical ass dark skinned people too. So I
Sure.
don't see that. I will admit in my circles in my life I haven't seen that. I guess it would make sense because the way there's so much colorism going on within our community. I can see someone light skinned trying to take up the mantle as far as to say, look, I'm just as black as you, if not all black. Now, what I will say is, it's not the light skinned people that seem to be taking up the mantle. It's the white people that acting, fronting like they black, like the Sean Kings, the Rachel
Right,
Dolezals. We get a
right,
lot of them jumping in the mix, trying to
right.
pass as light skin, and they really white. So
That's crazy. That's absolute. Now, and let me ask you this, and this was also one of the things that I saw in the movie, and black success. I call it the burden of black success. There's always this weight that we place on successful black people that they got to come back to the community and pull somebody back up. You got to come back. Do we put an unfair weight on people for that? I mean, why do we have to do that? Is that unfair?
it absolutely is unfair. Now, I think a lot of the things that we do is we relate the black experience to the Asian experience, the Indian experience, where they will definitely take advantage of whatever laws and things they can take advantage of and bring
Sure.
families over, bring their people over. Um, Even white people, they teach their children, they leave things for them, generational wealth. But the
Sure.
one thing that black people do, we expect the same thing, but we didn't start in the same manner.
Right.
One of the biggest people that we do that to, that we've done that to, and it's not necessarily going back to the community, it's all about what are you going to do for us, is Barack Obama. He had to play those identity politics his entire career, and he's damned if he does and he's damned if he doesn't. One the biggest knock on him from the black community, he didn't do enough for black people, where if you actually read up on it and look at the things he's done more for black people than anyone else. So that argument can be knocked off in a
I'm
minute.
gonna
But
disagree with you, but go ahead.
see, here we go. But with that being said, we it's still unfair because as when I'll use him as an example, as president of the United States, the one thing he can't do is get up there and say, "Hey, these laws are just for black people." Like
Right,
he can't do that,
right, right.
So, and then when people get successful, you always expect them to come back in the community. I would expect someone, if they're successful, they should move out of the hood. They should have a better life for themselves, because what you want people to see is that what you've earned has gotten you a bit of success. Now, there is a fine line, because what you don't want them to do is forget about the community. And I think we mix forgetting about the community and going back to the community. I think we get those mixed up. You don't want them to forget where they came from. You want them to understand the struggles and the plights of other people. You don't want them to forget, but it's unfair to expect people to do something for an entire community, especially if they have families that they got to do for themselves, because your first priority is to you and your family, not to anyone else.
Most definitely, most definitely. So, overall, I think it's a good, it's good. It's time well spent to watch One Night in Miami. I thought it was, like I said, I thought it was a solid film. I think it was a little thin in some spaces, but for the most part, I think it's something that you can definitely get something from it, a little inspiration from it, a little meat from it. I would not say that it's an Academy Award type of winning movie. I think for her first time out, I think Regina King did an excellent job with that. I love the acting. Like I said, I thought the acting was solid. I just thought the storyline in some places was kind of thin.
Yeah, if you have Amazon Prime, which a lot of us do, it's free on Amazon Prime, so it's
Never
not going to
hurt.
cost you any extra. You can
Right.
sit there and watch it. You can take a break from watching it if you need to. It's something
Right.
that you can definitely put on the list to watch. I
Put it
wouldn't
in your
suggest it as a movie night with the crew, with the people, because it's not.
right.
It's not going to gather enough attention for it. Some people may love it, but I don't think it's going to garner enough excitement for people to be excited to see. Um,
I think what
it's
it is, Calvin.
especially.
I mean, I
Would you
like
say?
to see me on screen. And so I think for a lot of us, if you just want to see black portrayals, positive black portrayals on the screen, yeah, this is a great movie for you.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so I can definitely give it a thumbs up on that. Of seeing a great, strong portrayal, great acting on it. But of course, if you need a little bit more, then yeah, you're gonna be kind of disappointed. But hey, if you just love to see black people on screen, you're gonna love this.
Well, see, now that you put it that way, I can't give it a thumbs down. I'll just give it a thumbs level. I'll just
Give
give
it
it
a ah.
because it's definitely all things black, just like we are. So I'm fine with that.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, man. So I'm ready for it. Hopefully, we get a new episode of This Is Us next week. Did you talk to Ken Olin? Did you talk to the people at NBC to get this straight?
First of all, I'm glad you brought up Ken Olin. If you are on Twitter and you are not following Ken Olin, you are doing yourself a disservice. Now, Trump is out of office, so he may not be as ornery as he was then, but Ken Olin did not hold back on Donald Trump and anybody that followed him. Ken Olin
Right.
is a monster on Twitter. Also, they had Mike Wallace at the beginning of this movie, One Night in Miami. They had
Yeah.
him talking about Cassius Clay. And
Right.
if you're not following Mike Wallace, not Mike Wallace, it's Dan Rather. It's Dan Rather you got to follow on Twitter.
Yeah,
He's a
Dan Rather,
monster.
I follow him on Twitter. Mike Wallace did. If you follow
Yeah,
Mike Wallace
it's
on
not Mike
Twitter,
Wallace. Well, you could
but it was
follow his
Mike
same.
Wallace in that scene though. That was Mike Wallace.
Yeah, but it's Dan Rather you got to follow,
Dan Rather,
and
you
you
gotta
also
follow.
got to follow Dionne Warwick if you're not following Dionne Warwick on Twitter. Follow Dionne Warwick on Twitter too, because she is amazing Twitter. But anyway, yeah, man. Hopefully, we'll get another new episode of This Is Us this week. If not, because they said it might be a couple weeks because of COVID. If not, we'll find something else to do for the folks. And our four loyal people that are watching, we'll definitely find something for you all to do. It got up to six though, man. It got up to
I saw
six.
some people pop in
Yeah, it got up to six,
on
so I ain't
Saturday
even
night
mad
at
about
7 o'clock.
it.
It's good. I'm happy. You
Hey,
can come
man,
back and
we got some people. Plus, it's a spoiler alert, so people might want to, stay away from
right.
it and watch it.
Yeah,
So,
you might want to watch
but
it.
yeah, man,
It's
this was good. We'll figure out what we're going to do next week if This Is Us doesn't come back. I definitely have this political thing I need to talk to you about because I am
yeah,
ready to launch it, sir. So
good.
we can get that together. Anyway,
Okay.
Hey man, have a good one. We thank all four of you, as many as six of you, for joining us tonight. Hope you all have a good weekend. Stay safe out here. We still don't have all the vaccines. Hey, this is
Master.
our first show under the new administration, the new Biden Harris administration, and I'm feeling better already. I now historically Democrats are going to take more out of your pocket, but that's okay as long as everybody's safe and healthy and we, live longer lives. So
We're about to get
anyway,
1,400 in a couple weeks. I'm ready for it.
hey man, yeah, we should be getting 1,400 every month. But anyway, that's another story. All right, man. Have a good
All right,
one.
bro.
See you next week. Everybody, stay
Peace.
safe.